G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it.
Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Michael Tucker from the Funnel Pros. He's based in Nashville, United States. Thanks for your time today, Michael.
Hey, thank you so much for allowing me to be on. I'm so excited for today.
Let's start with how we know each other. A few months ago, you emailed me to ask if we needed more guests. I had a look at what you do and thought you'd be really an interesting business owner for us to explore your journey.
Yeah. I was excited to hear about what you guys got going on. The podcast is great. So after diving into a few episodes, I said, let's add some value to some small business owners.
We'll tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Yeah, so we own a digital marketing company, and then we help online entrepreneurs in multiple different ways, but we primarily run virtual events and marketing promotions for online entrepreneurs. So that's anything from SaaS companies to coaches, speakers. We've helped almost every kind of online entrepreneur, and that's how we make our money, is stepping in, providing done-for-you solutions for our clients.
And are there any parts of the world you focus on helping? Is it just the US or outside?
Yeah, primarily. I mean, we have had a few international, clients, but primarily most of our clients are based down here in stateside in the US. We've had a couple in, Australia and a few others, a few other countries out around the world, but primarily US based.
So you mainly help online owners with garnering more leads?
Yeah, so what we do primarily is we step in and we help online entrepreneurs really spread their mission, their message further through virtual events. We truly believe that virtual events can be one of the greatest ways for you to expand your influence. And that looks a little bit different for everybody, right? For an insurance agent, that's going to look a little bit different than a SaaS company, right? But we've learned that online, virtual events, it's one of the greatest ways to take somebody from a cold lead to a hot customer, right, in very short amount of time. And so we perfected that, and we've been doing that for about 5 years now-ish, I would say. It's been a big learning journey, but that's our primary model.
And so you launched just before COVID started in 2019?
Yeah, so man, I guess it's been longer now. I told you 5 years, but I started it roughly at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018. So maybe my math is off a little bit, but we started out actually a year or two before COVID, and it was right when I was out of college. So this was something that I never anticipated I would be doing, but it was one of my first big ventures out of college.
And did you see a massive bump thanks to COVID?
Oh yeah. Whenever COVID came, a lot of people definitely, saw the power of virtual events. Virtual events were popular. People were using webinars, they were using online workshops, online conferences, but COVID only solidified what we were already starting to see, is that virtual events were so powerful, right? And so we've seen a lot of in-person conferences shift virtual, and we just realized, people started realizing how much money was there, and so we did capitalize on it, right? Whenever there's a wave, you got to ride it, and so we did ride that wave, and we're still riding it today, still finding client success and finding wins for those that work with us.
And how did you start out?
Yeah, so I actually started out going to college for business, and I honestly didn't know what type of business that I wanted to start. I just knew that I had entrepreneurship in my blood, and I had to get out there in that cash machine. So I was looking for the cash machine. I was saying, okay, what is that going to be, right? And so graduated college, just got married, was working part-time as a restaurant server, as a waiter, and I wasn't making that much money. But then one of my friends came up to me and said, Michael, you should try real estate. Now, this isn't about real estate, but he said, you should try it. And I said, well, here's the thing, David. His name was David. I said, I don't have a lot of money. And he said, how about you work in my business and I'll train you in real estate. And so we'll swap. You give me your labor and I'll give you my education, my knowledge, and we'll train you on how to get into entrepreneurship, but then also real estate. And that was like one of the best barters I've ever made in my life, because that was where I jumped in and started learning about marketing. I started learning about sales. And so we grew his business to like $750,000 in just about 10 months. And from there, that's where we started our marketing agency. People started getting word about what we were doing. They were like, "Wow, you guys got some amazing results. We're hearing about it. We're seeing what's happening, and we want you to, run our events. We want you to run our marketing." And so from there, I started just solo me by myself on this thing called the Funnel Pros. And so we help, like I mentioned, online entrepreneurs set up sales funnels and virtual event funnels in their business. And so I was about 21 maybe whenever I first kind of like started in that venture in that barter. So 21 years old jumping into it. I've learned a lot along the way. I think since then, I was starting out charging about, $1,000 per client, 1,500. I didn't know what I didn't know. And it was just starting out per project basis. I probably made the first year, I'd have to go back and look, but I probably made, $30,000, right? Maybe if that, because I was making people hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, but one of the things as a small business owner is I didn't value my skills yet enough, and I didn't have enough confidence. But then as we started progressing along, 2019 came, right? COVID, we started seeing, wow, we have a very valuable skill that's sought after. And so, going to recent, some of the numbers we can share, last year, from last year to this year, I think we've grown 12%. We've done multiple six figures each year over the past 3 years. So we aren't a seven-figure per year agency yet, but I'm sure within the next probably 2 or 3 years we will be. But we've been hitting around that 10 to 12% annual growth every year. So it's a little bit different than when I first started charging, $500, $750, $1,000 per client. So
Mm.
that's my story though.
Yeah, it's pretty common for entrepreneurs to undervalue themselves early on or for too long and not check their pricing. I certainly made that mistake probably for the first 5 years. Just back to David's business, you got it up to 750,000 sales in about 10 months. What was he doing when you first started working in the business, roughly?
Yeah, so actually he was doing nothing. I say nothing, but literally less than probably $10,000 a year, right? Because it was a fresh business he was just starting. So for him, it was the prime opportunity. He's like, I just started this business. I've only been attempting to grow this thing for a few months now. This would be perfect. I have somebody on my team now that can help me launch this. And so it was a brand new business. And I'm not going to say it was definitely a unicorn, right? We had some good partnerships, some good ways to market those events and market that business, but it was really cool to see.
And so you started 7 years ago. So how old were you when you started 7 years ago?
Yeah, so that was I'm getting I never keep track of time. So I started when I was 21. So that must, going doing the math here is 2024. So, you can do the math from there. I'm 27 now, so 6 years ago.
Yep.
So I started at 21, going from there,
Fantastic.
21,
Mm.
and been doing this. I thought it was 5 years, but I guess 4 or 5 years, time moves by fast.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I mean, he started out with nothing. And the cool thing is he didn't have any money for marketing either. So how we actually grew that business that first go round was through strategic partnerships, meaning we went to people who had his audience and partnered with them. And that's a cool little hack for any small business owner is like, hey, if you have limited resources, ask which resources do I have, and then go to other people that have the resources you don't have. And that's what we did is we created win-win scenarios. We said, hey, who has the resources we don't have, which is audience, right? We didn't have a big list. We didn't have money for, ad spend. And we went and partnered with some people that did have ad spend and did have, an audience. And we did joint ventures and we ended up making, a lot of revenue, through just the joint venture partnership. So one of my favorite ways to grow a business for sure.
And any other key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business, like number of full-time team members? I assume you started obviously on your own.
Yeah. We started out alone. Now we have about seven, including myself. They are all full-time, no part-time, but they are all virtual based. So everybody's at different locations around the world. But we have everybody working full-time, and there's seven of us.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
I think for me, part of it was I'd say go back to that first hire because you're like, man, this is officially a business, right? When you have that first hire, you're like, okay, I can kind of get some of the things off my plate. I can kind of delegate and to elevate, right? And so I would say number one was whenever I started working with a new hire in my business. But then I say number two, a second time is whenever I started working with higher quality clients, right? You can go out and pick anybody to work with when you have an agency, but whenever you get to a point to where people are seeking you out and you get to filter who you want to work with, that's a whole different ball game, right? And so for us, that just made me feel really good, made me feel successful. And I was like, okay, now I can kind of pick and choose who I want to work with instead of being stuck with people I don't like working with.
What does success look like to you?
For me, what I'm finding that success for myself is being able to live life on my own terms and grow a business to the place where it can run without myself. And I'm going to be honest, there's times where I struggle with this, but success for me is like whenever I could step away from the business runs by itself and I can go live the life I want. Do I want to go spend time with my little girl who's 2 years old now? Do I want to go do those things? And so as far as business success, that's what I see it as, is when you can duplicate leadership and you can, actually do the high level thinking, the high level tasks. So I think it's different for everybody, but that's my take.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
Man, if you have a fast growing business, one thing I recommend is something so simple but so profound is go where your audience is. Let me say this again. Go where your potential customers are. We have so many platforms out there, you all. We have TikTok, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have X. There's all these platforms and people, what happens, I don't know about you, but for myself, I see a lot of our clients that come in, they're trying to spread themselves too thin and they try doing everything. And they have these amazing fast growing businesses. And it's like, okay, dial in, ask where are my potential customers congregating and go there, market to them there, right? Marketing is just getting your message in front of them as much as possible, right? So how can I get my message out there, whether it's through organic content, paid traffic, partnerships, whatever that is, but go where the people are. And obviously I'm privy to virtual events as well, using virtual events in those arenas. But that's what I tell a lot of our clients when we're just starting out.
How did you fund the business?
The cool thing about agency model is a lot of times you don't need, the funding. Now, I take that, very lightly because, with a lot of businesses online, you have to have software, you have to have those things. So whenever I was first starting out and I needed those, I kind of just used my blood, sweat, and tears to create the cash and then use the cash to, pay for those softwares. But I've never actually gotten to a point to where I had to take funding as like grants. But most of the time, I just used my own money and reinvested it back in the business, reinvested it for new hires, reinvested for new softwares, new CRMs, things of that nature. So that's why I love the agency model, is you can kind of start from scratch and you don't need a lot of big funding.
So no other investors in the business, just yourself?
Just myself. Yep.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Yeah, I would say yes again, because if I had funding and knowing that this industry, you don't need a lot of funding to get started, I would say yes. And what I would have probably done different is hire from the top down instead of from the bottom up. Meaning I would probably went in and built, a leadership team first, meaning operations and sales and things of that nature, and invested with those funds. Whereas I started at the bottom and I started building up to where we had that leadership. And I think a lot of the successful entrepreneurs that I have worked with is they go against the norm, right? They say, okay, how can I hire my CEO first? Or how can I hire my HR first, right? And then build out the team, and then the team will build the business. And I think that's what I would do with that funding.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so audience can learn from it?
Man, I think one of the most stressful points is not hiring fast enough, right? And I think a lot of people, like, that first hire was like so liberating for me. But I think a lot of online, or not even online entrepreneurs, just small business owners in general, they think I have to do everything, right? I have to be the one. I have to be the one to work my business. When in reality, if you document your business, your task, your systems well, it could be the most liberating thing for you. And you could probably even 10x your growth, 5x your growth. So for me, that was one of the most painful in the past, and most stressful things, was trying to take all this workload and put it on myself. But whenever I could offload that and delegate, that's when I could elevate, right? And I said that earlier, but I love that phrase because it's so true.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I would say this, um, going back to the confidence piece, and I know this isn't like really tangible, like in my business, I had to prove SEO or anything like that, but going back to that confidence piece, because I was not performing at the highest for my clients when I didn't have the confidence in myself and what, obviously what we did. And so whenever I took time and I had to work on that, overcome the self-limiting beliefs that, I can't be a top agency, right? Or I'm not worth it because I'm from a little small town with 1,000, 2,000 people, right? And so there's all these things I had to overcome, but it was when I did overcome that, and I was listening to a motivational speaker on YouTube one time, and he was saying that how he went from speaking at high schools, speaking at churches, to going and speaking at the national football level, at the highest, speaking at Fortune 500 companies. He was saying it was because he just shifted his confidence and he started believing in himself more. So if you're here and you're a business owner, believe in yourself, have confidence in your skills, have confidence in your products, and step into that fully, and don't go back.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
I would say whenever you're starting a small business and there's fast growth, there can be a lot of strain on your personal life. And I say that meaning we're business owners, right? We can all be real here. Business tends to bleed into into our marriages, into our relationships, into our home life. And so I say one of the things that I've liked the least is how much pressure it's had to put on my family, right? It has to put on my relationships because oftentimes the business has to take first priority. And that's not always the case, but there are times, there's seasons where that happens. So I would say that was probably the least favorite about managing fast growth, but fast growth is good growth.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
Great question, man. So whenever it comes to the small business, I feel like it's something different about it versus corporate. Let me say it this way. Corporate, you can have an amazing large business, right? And I've been a part of a few corporate, entities, not so deep, but I've been a part of them. A lot of regulation, a lot of red tape, right? When you're growing a small business and you're hearing or you're experiencing that speed, there's something about it. There's something you can customize for your clients, you can customize for your team. And so one of my favorite parts, and the reason why I love growing a small business, is because you can really decide how you want to move the future, right? You can decide where your destination is, and you don't have to worry about, like I mentioned, all the things you would have to deal with in a larger company, a corporate company. So I know it's a little bit different answer, but I would say just love the freedom that comes with the small business.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey? You may have already mentioned that.
Yeah, going back, the confidence was one thing. I think another thing was, so we talked about the confidence. We talked about, thinking I had to do everything myself. But another one that I would say recently, that's been one that I've had to overcome, is the fact that sometimes small growth is better than no growth. Meaning, sometimes when you're hitting 5, 10% annual growth every year, or whether it's a little bit more, you're like, man, I want more.
Mm.
I want more. I want more. But realize it's good to want more, right? But it's even better to be satisfied with the results you've gotten up to that point. Not saying you have to settle, but being satisfied and grateful for it. So for me, I'm like, man, I wish we'd have, be at these numbers by now. We're working, putting in it, but then going back and reflecting and saying, okay, but we've made growth. Looking back from 2021, uh, you know, even from there, I think that was like the year I was like, okay, this is six, like we're getting six figures ish, area. Like, okay, this is cool. But looking back, like that was amazing. Like that was growth, starting out from charging $750, $1,000 per event, and making 30,000 to growing up. So I think perspective was one of those things, I guess, working on. That's one of the mindset shifts I've had to make.
And sometimes it's smarter to pause the growth, especially if you're adding people to the team or building out systems rather than just going for growth, all the time.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Sometimes you have to slow down to speed up,
Yep.
right?
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Man, the habit of commitment is one thing I preach all the time, meaning so many people jump around from small business to small business and they try three or four different small businesses and they come back and say, "Hey, this isn't working. I'm not finding, success," when in reality it's just they're not committing to something long enough. So I think you need to build a habit of actually committing to something long enough to see the results. And I'm talking like a year, 2 years. I just watched a video and listened to a podcast recently of a guy saying, like, he's gotten to the point to where he tells himself, "Hey, if I'm entering this venture, can I see myself being in this, for the next 5 to 10 years?" Now, I'm not saying that has to be for everybody because that may not be what you want, right? You may want to just have a little side hustle. But for a small business owner, like, business is not for the faint of heart. And ask yourself, am I willing to commit to see this through no matter what? Because remember, to refine a skill, to get really good at something, you have to spend hours and hours and hours and hours at it. Michael Jordan, right? He probably shot thousands and thousands of shots. The greatest players in the world have taken thousands and thousands of bats, right? And that's how they got great. And so for a small business owner, get in the habit of saying, "Okay, I'm going to commit to this no matter what, despite the failures, despite the hangups, despite any hurdles, I'm going to see this through no matter what."
Yeah, I think it's in our DNA as small business owners. We suffer from shiny object syndrome. We get bored easily. We want to move on to the next thing, but you're right. You absolutely got to stay the path and be focused and disciplined. And recently, Alex Hormozi's been really driving this point home. I'm not sure if you listen to any of his podcasts or his books, but he's also made the same mistake that I did early on in my business career of just starting too many things and not focusing on one and pushing it hard until it was, able to run itself, basically.
Yeah, 100%. I think that going along with that, sometimes what happens is you'll find growth and then there's pivots that need to happen. So sometimes what you'll do is you'll get in, like, there's been multiple times in my businesses where we've actually gone a year or two, found growth, and then realized something wasn't working, or another area in our industry would probably be better for us. So we've made several pivots, pivots where we started working with only certain clientele, pivots where we were only doing certain type of virtual events. So there's going to be ebbs and flows, right? There's going to be hills and valleys, and there's going to be times where you have to pivot, but that's okay. At least you're in the game and you're pushing forward.
Are you a small business owner who is ready to take your professional growth to the next level? Sign up to the Grow a Small Business weekly newsletter. This is your go-to email every Friday and will take about 2 minutes to read. Join the Grow a Small Business community who, like you, are investing in their professional development. Each week, we curate valuable resources, whether it's expert advice, books, podcasts, industry insights, or actionable strategies. We've got you covered. Leave your email at growasmallbusiness.com/weekly.
Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah, hiring is always something that, a lot of people struggle with. But for me, early on, I said, you know what, I'm going to vet my team like crazy, meaning that I'm going to make sure I'm going to take the extra time to hire to make sure I get the right people on my team. And so that's been the secret to success for me whenever it comes to hiring, is that I've literally have taken months to hire somebody. And I know sometimes you can't afford that, right? And there's been times where I haven't been able to afford that. But whenever possible, I've been like really, really picky with who I hire. I want to bring on people who are great. And I think a lot of people just settle for just getting the position filled because they just want the position filled so they can get something off their plate. When in reality, I would love to find somebody who's a master at their craft and a master at what they do to step into my company. And sometimes that means you have to pay a little premium, right? You have to pay a little extra. But that's something I would recommend any, small business owner is, taking time to hire right. And some of the mistakes, I've made is not, when I did bring on, new hires that weren't a good fit, is maybe not letting them go soon enough, right? I can look back in my journey and there's probably two or three individuals along the past 5, 6 years that I'm like, man, I probably should have let them go sooner. But you don't know what you don't know. So they say be slow to hire, quick to fire. So I kind of go that route, for myself. And that's what I would say would be my recommendations.
I've certainly made that mistake. I've got the t-shirt. What are some of the things you
Yeah.
recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
I would say for us is making training a part of your culture. And let me say this, so many people expect their new hires to know exactly what to do in your business. When in reality, a new hire may or may not know how to do it your way. Meaning they may come from XYZ company that does marketing a certain way, but when you bring them in your company, you're going to do marketing a whole different way, right? And so I think for us, what I've noticed just our company culture compared to others is we're always asking ourselves, how can we make our employees better? How can we train them better? And we've actively take involvement in making sure they get the support they need and the training they need to get better at their skill. And so a lot of people, ask the question, well, what if I train them and they leave, right? And you may have heard this statement before. They say, what if I train them and they leave? Well, what if you don't and they stay, right? And so, so that's a big thing with our culture.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I would say this has been something that I actually struggle with going back to that mindset shift over the past, probably up the first 4 years, and something that recently over the past year or two is something that, I've been actively working on and getting better at. I would say, you can ask my wife if she thinks that or not, but I would say for me, definitely finding what gives you hope. And I was listening to you'll hear me say I'm listening to videos and podcasts because I love consuming other entrepreneur stuff. I was listening to an individual. He was sharing how he went from bankruptcy to owning a multi-million dollar company. And he was saying during his bankruptcy, he was at the lowest in his life. And actually, how he got out of that was by finding passions outside of work that he could fix his attention on and set goals for. And so for me, one of those things that I've found recently that I've missed for so long is distance running, long distance running. And so I got back into that, setting goals. Hey, I'm doing these races, and that has made me commit to doing more outside of work, right? Made me commit to more outside of my, you know, other professional commitments. And so I'd say number one, finding other things you're passionate about. Number two, whenever are having trouble with those, speak with people about your struggles. Speak to people about how the imbalance is hurting you, and just literally opening up to a mentor, opening up to somebody else, is a great way to get the guidance you need. And so that's what I did. And that's what they were able to say, Michael, this is what I see in your life. This is what I recommend that you get back to balance. But I'm going to be honest, we all know that in business, there's going to be seasons where you're completely off balance. There's going to be seasons where, you got a pretty good handle on it. But it's up to you to kind of navigate that journey yourself.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself? Sounds like a fair bit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, constantly, I have my own show as well. So I use my podcast, and maybe you do the same thing. I use my podcast as like a personal development tool. You get to interview people, hear amazing mindset shifts, and tips. But at the same time, over the past few years, I've spent, a lot of money on mentorship. I can think the most recent one, $20,000 on mentorship, in our business. So I'm a big believer that investing in yourself is needed because there's power in being in the right rooms.
Yeah, in the last bit over 4.5 years now doing the podcast, there's probably 3 or 4 books that guests have put me onto that are in my top 10 that have been around for decades. Some of those books have been around for a long time, and I could not believe I'd never come across them. So I certainly, the same as you, view this as professional development for me as well, doing these podcasts. I absolutely love it, learning other people's tips and mistakes as well.
Yeah. The greatest way to learn is from the failures of others, right?
That's it. It's the cheapest way. So you've mentioned you've had mentors and sounds like coaches as well. Any other advice around that for the audience?
Yeah, I would just say, really in this industry, and I'll say this, in this day and age, there's so many people proclaimed as coaches and mentors. Really take time, again, be slow to pick who you want to hire as your coach and mentor. As a small business owner, there's a lot of potential for you to grow, and you need to find the right person that not only has the knowledge you need, but has the experience. And I think that's where a lot of people miss out on. They go to these people that have the knowledge because the people found the knowledge on YouTube, they found the knowledge in a book, but they don't actually have hands-on experience. So ask yourself, is the person I'm going to hire, the person that I'm following, are they giving me the knowledge that I need to get to the next level? The knowledge that I don't have, but then also are they going to come with experience, right? Because Working with somebody that's been in, for example, if you're wanting to get into real estate, getting coached by somebody that's only been in for the past 2 or 3 years, we all know the markets, well, here in the US, the markets have been really well over the past 2 or 3 years. They're starting to go down now. But I want a coach who's been through the recessions. I want a coach who's been through the toughest of times so they can coach me in the future the right way. So that would be the only thing I would say for those that are searching for a mentor.
It's really good advice. Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
You know what? That's something we're working on, but no, I do not at this moment. There's people that have been telling me, Michael, you need an advisory board. You need other people you can go to. So I would be open, man, to hear how you recommend that, because I've been looking and searching for guidance on how to do that myself.
Well, a couple of years ago, I actually wrote, because I get asked this, because I sit on 5 boards myself and I chair most of those, which I really enjoy. It's a different aspect of growing a business. In all various types of businesses, industries, from spirits business through to beer, through to accommodation, golf, etc., online education. And some have shareholders working in the business, others don't. Others have just in the brewery, the second largest craft brewery here in Tasmania, for example, that I've chaired now for about 8 years. There's just 3 of us on the board. We're all independents. We don't own shares. But so I wrote 2 LinkedIn articles on this topic, so I'll send those through to you. But one of the key tips is, I believe, even at an advisory board level, not an official directorship level, I think you should have a chairperson that should be independent, and you start with them and then build the team around. And the obvious thing you need to do is a gap analysis. So what skills and experience are you and the business really missing? For a lot of businesses, that's marketing is one of the big ones, also finance. So you need to do that gap analysis and then find the right chair that is polite but blunt, and are going to have those difficult conversations with you and push you and hold you to account, because it's lonely at the top. You don't have anyone that you report to. And but yeah, I'll shoot those articles through you.
Awesome, amazing, great advice for sure. I think that's probably the next step for us.
All right, Michael, on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I think there's a lot of things we talked about that are hard about growing a small business. I think one of the hardest things for me, outside of what's already been discussed today, is wanting. Let me figure out how to say this, because I don't want to confuse people. I want to make sure that it's clear. I think as a small business owner, there's a lot of times when we have, going back to the perspective, but we have big dreams, we have big goals. I think that a lot of times, because you're starting out, small, there is that limitation there. You're working by yourself or 1 or 2 people. And so you have these big goals, this big vision, right? You want the big office, you want the big, you want to be on these big stages speaking, or, you want to have so much clientele, but you're starting out where you're at. So I think one of the hardest thing is learning how to navigate where you're at now, but then still plan and project for that growth, if that makes sense. So you have this big vision, this big goal, you want to be up here, but you're down here, right? You're at the micro. So how do you prepare for the macro while being micro? I think that's one of the hardest things. But I think if you get the right mentors, the right people around you, you can set up yourself for success and set up the right plan to hit that. So take some time. I would encourage you to create a plan, look at the macro, look at the big, and then reverse engineer.
Your favorite business book, which has helped you the most?
One of my favorites recently, and it's kind of a dry book, but I love the book called Traction. Recently, that's been a really good one.
Yep, Gino
just
Whitman.
because I think a lot of, yep. So Traction's been a really good one. Just because I think a lot of the business owners I work with are small business owners. They're 1, 2 people in their business, 3, maybe at the most 4 or 5. And so once they start getting these new hires, it's like, okay, how do you actually put in a good operating system? And so that's been a great book for us.
Any great podcasts, online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest platforms that I've currently been using right now, and I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, but I use a lot of YouTube channels. There's so many great YouTube channels out there of people just giving value some are being salesy, right? Some are selling products and stuff on there, but there's a lot of great YouTube channels out there. So a few of my favorites, which I can pull up here on my phone, and these are all based around marketing. So if you want really great marketing shows, I actually have maybe, I don't know, maybe Troy, we can go ahead and get this. I have I have a playlist that I can give you all, and it's my favorite marketing videos.
That'd be awesome. If you send me that link, I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, so I have many individuals that ask for that, and they find it super valuable. So one of my favorites is obviously I follow a lot of Alex Hormozy. Everybody knows him, but Russell Brunson. I watch a lot of Russell Brunson videos. There's one guy named John, and I never can say his last name, John uh, Penberthy, I believe that's how you say it. I can never say it right. Really amazing whenever it comes to speaking to sell. Myron Golden. If you don't know who Myron Golden is, look him up. He's amazing. His YouTube is really phenomenal, and he has a different view on marketing and sales. So there's plenty of them out there. You all listen. There's tons of resources. What I've decided to do is just commit 10 to 15 minutes per day diving into something new, and I've been able to discover a lot of amazing teachers and a lot of amazing mentors.
That's great. I read recently that in the US, 28% of podcasts are consumed through YouTube. I think it's 15% on Spotify, and maybe it's 18%, and then only 13% now on iTunes, which is a diminishing platform.
Right.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Yeah, I really fell in love recently with the tool called HighLevel. I don't know if you guys have used it before. You can go to gohighlevel.com. It's a phenomenal tool. I really love it. It's a CRM. It's you can build websites on it. You can text and email your customers. I'm a big marketing guy. And so with marketing, with sales, there's a lot of softwares, right? Even with running a small business, tons of softwares. You have to have these contract softwares. You have to have, listen, HighLevel. If you don't know what it is, go check it out. You'll fall in love with it. There's so many amazing tools, meaning that you can literally get rid of your contract signing software. You can send all the SMS you want, emails. You can invoice customers from it. So which is really cool. That's literally taken our software cost and cut it in half. And I think it's less than $300 a month for everything. It's amazing.
That's great. No, another guest has mentioned that. I haven't checked it out yet though, but thanks.
Yeah.
My favorite question. 100%. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 7 years ago?
I would say day one starting out, I'd say, Michael, you're gonna have a lot of success, right? You're making a lot of money, you're gonna help a lot of people. Start again, going back to the value piece, start valuing yourself earlier, man. Because I could have been that growth that we're experiencing today, I could have probably been experiencing this about 3 years ago. Right. And so I know that's been constant thing we've been talking about. But again, if you're here, don't forget, take some time, evaluate yourself. If you're getting results for your customers, if people love your product, people love your services, it could be that if you want to maximize your revenue, it could be just you increasing your prices by 10%, by 20%, or maybe even doubling your prices, right? So there's a lot of easy ways to increase your income, and that could be one of them.
Thanks so much for your time today, Michael. I've really enjoyed our chat, and congratulations to you and the team on the growth, hitting 7 figures pretty soon and helping a lot of businesses out there with their digital marketing. So I really appreciate your time.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
We're getting some great iTunes reviews. For those listening, please pop over to your podcast app and leave us a review.